Change is coming to NIL and soon. How does this impact Nebraska? We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And our title sponsor today is Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the Google Play or the App Store.
Okay, welcome in on this Tuesday. Today, we are going to continue with our series on the state of Nebraska football. And this is kind of the state of college football today as we get into this discussion, both in the big picture and in 2024. Today, we do go big picture. We're going to head back to 30,000 feet above the ground after talking about the Nebraska quarterbacks in 2024. Yesterday on Tuesday. It's Wednesday today.
Yeah,
I may have said
today's Wednesday. Right.
Boy, okay. My mind is in a lot of places. Here's the question. How is the fast approaching reality of in-house NIL set to affect Nebraska? I got an email, Connor, this morning. First thing in the morning, 8 a.m., University of Michigan sends out a message that it's hiring Therese Whitehead from the NFLPA. And she's got a background in sports marketing, represented clients all over the sports world. She's coming to Michigan as its first NIL general manager. According to Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, in this press release, this is a pivotal moment for Michigan athletics. I think we're getting to a pivotal moment in college sports, one that will greatly impact the people in Lincoln also. So your thoughts on what's happening here and what you think is going to happen here in the months ahead?
Well, I mean, last week there was a lot of reporting done about what, where we are, and the NCAA seems as if at this point it wants to settle. They have a lot of lawsuits coming up against them right now in the courts, and it would cost them a whole hell of a lot more money if they didn't do that. It's going to cost them a lot over a long period of time if they do settle. But when they do, which it seems like that's clearly the path right now, that'll the framework will be laid for taking an NIL as we know it right now, which is basically just pay for play in-house. And
don't say that to the NCAA.
Right. The NCAA doesn't like to hear that, but that's kind of the way it's been used so far. And there were some estimates. I read some stuff last week about. We're talking about $30 million per school for the schools that opt into this per year. And so that's a really big chunk of change that could go out to athletes, and it changes the game. It changes how you set up your athletic department. It changes. I mean, as you've already seen in Michigan, Mitch, like the employment people, like it's not just going to be one person in charge of NIL. It's going to be an entire department, whether it has to do with compliance, the money, who goes where, who does what. There's going to be a lot that goes into this. So Nebraska feels like they're, by the guidance of Trev Alberts, set out a while ago now, they've positioned themselves to at least be maybe more prepared than others. They've been talking about this idea for a long time. So that should prepare them for where they're at. What have they actually done? There's a couple people in the athletic department who deal with this on a daily basis, and they would kind of go to the top of the line. But you don't know until we actually see what the structure and the framework is for this new world that it seems like soon about to be in. But it does feel like Nebraska is prepared. That's where I'd start, I think.
Yeah, I'm reading from the Michigan press release that Altius Sports Partners, that's the company that recruited Therese Whitehead from the NFLPA and works on behalf of these college athletic departments to set up a system, to set up kind of a baseline of what they can do in-house right now with NIL. And really that's about educating the players. It's about like overseeing what kind of activities they have, but they can't be involved at this point in allowing in helping the schools pay the players. That's still all coming through the collectives, which are third party. But Altius has 17 schools that it's working with, according to Michigan. Nebraska being one of those schools. Nebraska has had a partnership with Altius for a while now, over a year. And last year, Nebraska did promote a compliance officer, Jonathan Bateman, to assistant AD for NIL strategy and governance. So essentially a position like what we saw Michigan announce here today on Wednesday. So Nebraska's not behind by any stretch on this, but according to the staff directory that's posted on Huskers.com, Bateman is the only employee full-time with the University of Nebraska who is entirely devoted to NIL. And that's where I think you're just going to see dramatic change in the months ahead as this stuff passes. Because as you mentioned, the NCAA is getting on board. It did just pass a package of legislation in April that allows schools to help players find opportunities, facilitate deals, among other things. But of course, the existing rule about straight pay for play, that's still off limits. We'll see. We'll see where this goes. There are going to be contracts for players not too far down the road, I would think, involved with in-house NIL. Where's the money going to come from? Is it still going to come from donors primarily, or is a school like Nebraska that benefits so much from the Big Ten TV contract going to be able to use some of that to sign players to contracts? Essentially,
I think you'd have to. Like, it's an entire, like, it's a total restructure of your athletic department, because that's a big chunk of what you do. First of all, I mean, your student athletes are the most important thing, and this is the most important thing to a lot of student athletes. I don't want to put everybody under the same umbrella, but I mean, it's a total restructuring from an employee standpoint of who you have in the athletic department, what they're in charge of, but then also where your money, outside donations, like you said, TV contracts, all the money that you get from outside, you have to figure out how to most efficiently allocate that money as well. So it felt like Nebraska, their awareness of this for a long time had put themselves in a good position to at least like be out in front of this. Now, how much money have they quote unquote put away for this? And what's the step in that regard, or how prepared are they to like press the button and then things change and your athletic department changes right before our eyes? Like, how prepared is Nebraska to do that? I don't know. Maybe you know more than me, Mitch, about that piece of it, but the awareness about it has been there for a really long time. But it's a total change. It's a total restructure, and you don't know it. You don't know what's how to react to it until you actually see the framework of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, in theory, Nebraska should be in good shape, and we can talk about some more of this after the break that we have upcoming in a few minutes. But in theory, Nebraska should be in good shape because it is one of the few college football programs out there and athletic departments out there that has a surplus. There are others that are swimming in debt every year. And if you ask them at this stage to say, okay, go live right now, and now you have to have essentially a payroll for your rosters, there's going to be a big, hey, where does that come from? What does that look like? Do they have to then transition from the collective, everything that's being paid by donors over into athletics? And I think some of that will happen, but
Mitch, like you don't have to do it. Like if you're now, I don't know of too many power athletic departments who aren't going to do it, but if you are going to do it, you won't be involved in the future landscape of big time college athletics. But you could bow out. It's like if you're like, hey, this is too much for me, I can't compete. I can't play this game. There's going to be a lot of schools that do that, and so it changes the framework of college sports from that perspective as well.
That's a great point, because there will be that option. there will be the schools that, you might see now, like in the lower part of Division I, like the FCS programs, even some Group of 5 programs that just can't compete. And there's absolutely no way they can have a $20 million payroll when it comes to football, or even a $5 million or a $2 million in some cases. So they're going to end up playing, it would seem, at a different level of the game. I would think. You're not going to be able to schedule those teams at some point. That may be 10 years down the road, but this stuff is coming now. This stuff is on the way. So I would say to fans and observers out there, don't close your eyes to it. Don't look away. It's going to happen. These announcements like the one we saw by Michigan today are only going to get more common. Georgia has an in-house NIL department. Just a quick Twitter search this morning told me that. But another thing, and we're going to get to a break here, but something else we can talk about is the contracts and how that might impact what we see today. We see players today who have a lot of control and a lot of power over when they play, and what kind of effort they're allowed to give, especially toward the end of football seasons. But I do want to address at least that topic when we come back from the break. Until then, please make sure that you are subscribing to us, following us, Locked On Nebraska on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Amazon Music. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On NEB. Email us. We'll answer your questions on the show at lockedonneb@gmail.com. After the break, more talk about the future of NIL and other stuff that's going on this week around the University of Nebraska.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Now, Mitch, as we get back here for the second segment, as we piggyback off our NIL conversation from the last one, I saw this story. It's kind of straying off a little bit, but it's certainly NIL related. Have you seen the story in college basketball, the tournament in college basketball that they're putting together for next year in Vegas, where they are inviting, whoever, it's going to be a highly competitive field, and teams will want to get in because they are paying each of the teams that are in this field of this tournament, their collectives, $1 million to go toward their basketball NIL war chest, which is pretty significant for college basketball. Obviously, this will be big brands, but especially for basketball, there's the type of thing where, that changes the game. We'll mention, I could mention Nebraska here, I could mention Creighton here. That's a giant leap for your NIL operation if you get $1 million and you're in this just for being in this tournament.
Imagine that. Imagine how the coach is going to feel knowing that winning the tournament could buy you 2 players for a year, or one superstar transfer, something like that. That's incredible. And I wonder if we'll see bowl games start to go down that road.
Definitely. That's absolutely. And by the way, this tournament, which it looks like is going to happen next year, $1 million NIL payouts for the 8 participating schools. This is run by each of them. And we're talking about running by Vegas casinos and conglomerates and stuff like that. It's a different deal. And so you bring up the bowl games part. We're trying to figure out how to fix bowl games, and the playoff has certainly changed the bowl games over the years. And what's going to happen now is I think there's an opportunity for money to come into play here and make these things matter a little bit more, and the bowl games can pay their way back in. We've seen a little bit of that stuff already. It's kind of part of the old school feeling of bowl games where they show up and they get the gift suites and stuff like that. But now it's going to be in the form of cold hard cash. So like there's just so many options. And I think just now, funny enough, as we're kind of changing over to a different version of NIL, it seems like soon, people are starting to get the grasp of what they can do with this. And now there will be change even more going forward.
Yeah, the bowl games and more to the point, the bowl game sponsors could just pay the winning players, just pay the winning team, pay the MVP. You can get, much like the, the Pro Bowl or the Super Bowl, you could give the MVP of the Cotton Bowl a Chevy Silverado. Just present it to him on the field, and he could do a little spot for Chevy right there. Hey, I'm looking forward to driving this vehicle, and then there you go. That's your NIL payoff. I think we're realizing now, just a few years into the NIL era, that it was always going to head in this direction. That once you opened that door, there was really going to be any way to shut it. And it wasn't just going to be this nominal amount of money that players received, because there's so much in the sport. There's so much money out there in the sport, being funneled through the TV networks and advertisers with the TV networks, that ultimately it was going to make its way back to players. One other thing I want to mention about this, and there's been some reporting recently. I saw Ross Dellinger from ESPN had some stuff on the potential with contracts that involve football players to include language saying that if you're going to have a contract, then the contract will stipulate that you can't opt out. We've seen opt-outs regularly, and it's been damaging to postseason games, to bowl games, and even potentially to the college football playoff. It hasn't hurt the college football playoff markedly to this point, but with 12 teams in the playoff starting in 2024, it's only a matter of time before someone opts out of a playoff game. And that's the last thing I think that anyone in college football wants to see. So if your contract states that you have to play in order to get paid, but not pay for play, if you have to play in order to get paid, that's going to limit this opt-out stuff.
Yeah, there's just so much to it. And remember, like if it goes in-house, and the deals with the players and stuff like that, that stuff will become public information for the public schools as well, and everybody,
their employees. Yeah,
everybody gets to see that, depending on how it's framed up. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but I think it's an important point just on how it works. And we'll take a break and get to something that you did yesterday in a minute here. But the coaches and the athletic directors, I probably stresses out the athletic directors more than it does the coaches. The coaches really love this idea because, of taking NIL in-house, because it kind of goes underneath their roof. They get more control. They understand what's going on. They can talk about it, right? It may be, in the case of Matt Rule, it maybe makes his job a little bit harder, but he doesn't care. He works 24/7 anyway, and so he gets to kind of have control over it, which I think a guy like him sort of appreciates. So like the football piece of this, there's also that as well.
Yeah, I've talked with Matt Rule about it, and I think we've talked about it here on the show, just about how backwards he believes, and I think most coaches believe it is, to have to be beholden to a collective to make sure that they're doing their part. He technically, legally, by the rules, he cannot control the collective. He cannot give the collective orders to allocate X amount of funds to his star quarterback recruit. It's all got to be done on their side of it. And that's just ridiculous to think about, that nobody inside Memorial Stadium is involved in these discussions with recruits and potential transfers and the current players about how they're going to be compensated via NIL. So a lot of that silliness will be gone when this change inevitably does happen. But until then, they'll continue to have have this awkward give and take. And I think also final thought on this, there'll be a place for the collective can kind of just get folded in. You're looking, we talk about how Nebraska has just one full-time employee devoted to NIL. Well, there's several others who with potential to work for Nebraska who are out there. And right now they work for 1890, and Nebraska can make that decision if they want to bring everybody from 1890 on board to work in athletics. And that'll be interesting. More interesting at some schools than it will be at others. But it's all kind of set up for this to happen and happen soon. And I don't want to say seamlessly, but without a whole lot of difficulty if you're in a place like Lincoln, Nebraska. So that's comforting, I think, for Matt Rule and for Troy Dannon and everyone else who has a huge stake in this.
Yeah. Coming back, Mitch, I want to ask you about what you did yesterday. It trust me, it doesn't involve mowing the lawn or fixing a dishwasher or anything like that. It's sports related. Good. So we'll get to that after the break. And a quick reminder before we send you there, if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch today to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Time to talk now about Monopoly Go. And you're sitting there listening, watching us on YouTube, and you're saying, I know about Monopoly Go because I've heard you guys talk about Monopoly Go a lot here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. And that's right, you have, but it's so good. That's the reason you've heard us talk about it. And we've got more to say about Monopoly Go. It's the new spin on the classic board game Monopoly. You can team up with your friends in a digital environment for timed tournaments where you work together to build each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, like stickers to trade, cool new playing pieces to travel the board with. You get hilarious emojis to taunt your friends when you smash their buildings or when you heist their vaults. Go heist your friends' vaults. I recommend that. Monopoly Go features constantly changing tournaments and challenges. There are mini games. You can dig for treasures and do all kinds of other stuff. And as always, there will be new events to help you win big. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it now free on Google Play or the App Store.
All right, wrapping things up here on a Wednesday. Let's get into something we're going to get to earlier, but the NIL conversation, of course, took off in 40,000 different directions, as it does. So, Mitch, we got a story coming out later this week on The Athletic, which I'm really excited about a person heavily involved with Nebraska football. But you also got a sneak peek yesterday at something I think people have only seen pictures of so far. How was Nebraska's new facility walking through there?
Yeah, I didn't exactly get a tour of the new facility, but I was on the first level of the new facility. The coaches are moving in the process, or just right about to be in the process of moving in on the third floor. I think by the time the players come back after finals, when they take their week or so away from Lincoln, the coaches should be up there on the third floor. I don't know that for certain, but that seems to be the schedule that they're on. The first floor is a bustling place, and I was in the weight room yesterday. I got to peek into the recovery area. I was around the sports science, sports nutrition, all that stuff. So yeah, I do have a story that's coming out later this week, Thursday or Friday, that involves a conversation that I had while I was in there yesterday. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place, and something that you just can't take for granted if you're an employee who works in there, or you're a football player who's coming through that building. 165 million. You start to see how far that can go, and it does a lot. I was not in the locker room, but the locker room is on that same level. So look forward to sharing what I've got coming up on the Athletic, and also I look forward to being able to get a tour of that thing when it's fully functional and operational, and everyone's in there. The training table and some other student services will be the last thing to go in on floor 2.
I'm really interested in, because this was originally a Scott Frost, Bill Moose project. I mean, we remember the day we all stood out there outside of the outside of Memorial Stadium, and Waddell Robinson gave a little speech, and Frost and Moose, and that's quite a moment in time, right before Nebraska got drilled by Ohio State on a Saturday night in 2019. So this is a long time ago and a long time coming now. And I think that administration had a vision for that building. Matt Rule has, I don't know about a completely different vision for the building, but he certainly has emphasized things, I think, that would be a little bit different. I mean, we know what Rule is all about. I wonder how you felt like the building sort of reflects him and his coaching style.
Yeah, definitely some of the stuff that I saw on Tuesday is a reflection of the changes that Rule made. I think most of the third level, most of the second level are the same as what the original vision entailed. But that recovery area is it's cutting edge. You can just see, and people have seen videos and photos, so I'm not telling them something they didn't know, but to stand outside and, just, you can smell it smells like a health club, because there's the pool smell, and you can see the pools in there, and they can walk up, and there's there used to be just like in Connor, you've seen this, outside of the old weight room, there was a little kiosk that you could stop and get like a custom made shake if you were a football player coming out of a lifting session. No more. That's like a full on, like supersized Starbucks or Scooters that they can stop at, with all kinds of signs about how to take care of their bodies, and options galore on the protein shakes and other nutritional items that they might serve there. And it's right between the recovery. It's there's an intersection that comes together, where you come out of the locker room and you can take a left and go into the recovery area. You can take a right and go into the weight room. And there's offices down the hallway if you go straight. And then right in front of you is this refueling station. So it's got to be an amazing experience when you bring recruits into that space. I know it is, because we've heard them say that, but to walk through it myself, you can kind of put myself like in the eyes of like a parent of a recruit, and I would think, okay, yeah, this looks like a pretty good place to send my kid.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic. So I look forward to your story coming up later this week, that I think that'll deal a lot with the building that we just talked about. Anything else that we should get to before we get a minute or two here before we get out of here? There was a couple like floater stories that we were going to mention.
Yeah, I think we can get to some of that stuff on Thursday.
All right.
We're going to talk about Mike Riley as a new member of the college football playoff. So come back and hear us talk about that on Thursday. And we're also going to talk about Monty Harrison. You may remember him. He was a member of the 2014 Nebraska football recruiting class. Yeah, he's coming back to college football. Nothing weird about that. I've got a story actually on the Athletic today on Wednesday. I've gone through this entire episode like really struggling on what day it is and what day tomorrow is, but there will be a story posting on the Athletic. I talked to Will Bolt, who was involved in recruiting Monty Harrison, and Monty Harrison's old high school coach, who's long since retired, of course, from Lee Summit West in Kansas City, about this bid for him to come back and play pro football after a decade in pro baseball. And then finally, Nebraska baseball is at home tonight. South Dakota State's in town. The Jacks come in with an RPI of 250. Jackson Brockett gets the ball again after his no-hitter last week against Kansas State. Final thought, Connor, is this an absolute must-win for Nebraska?
Yes, they definitely cannot lose it. I had the great pleasure of doing a South Dakota State game earlier in the year. They actually have one very good player. His name is Cale Frost. So if you bump into him tonight, just walk him a couple times. But yeah, Nebraska should be okay theoretically tonight.
Yeah, not a whole lot of must-win Wednesday night games in college baseball, but if you've got an RPI of 22 and you're trying to host or get a good seed in the postseason, don't lose. Don't lose to South Dakota State. So, words of advice to end the show for the Huskers on Wednesday night at Haymarket Park. All right, Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app.